because there's some parts that's a little grim, but it's all true. And we need to contend with it because it just is what it is. So first and foremost, this global climate crisis that we're dealing with has us in a situation right now where there's been at least 8 inches of global sea rise in the level since the Industrial Revolution. And the reason that reference to the Industrial Revolution is so important because our current economic system of capitalism got its greatest foundational roots from an industrial mill less than 300 years ago that borrowed, which really means they stole, a technology strategy from the British that increased the speed by which cotton could be threaded. And this is all connected to the environment, by the way, so just stick with it. That was ultimately to create clothing, but to be clear, capitalism as we know it today truly has gained its strength and acceleration from exploiting enslaved people, using unpaid labor, and declaring a colonizer's ownership over land that indigenous people once already were the stewards of. So when we think about that, and we think about that control over those cotton fields, sugar plantations, and other crops, cotton plantation owners then are no different than what we see now with corporate plant owners today. Their descendants are corporate plant owners today, and they are benefiting from the accumulation of wealth because owners of the cotton mills essentially owned all of the means of production, the equipment needed to produce, the land from which the natural resources came, and again, I want to remind you over and over again that they were able to do so with free labor, forced labor, the exploitation of labor. And when you don't have to pay for the land because you stole it, you don't have to pay for the equipment because you just claimed it as yours, and you have people working for you that you do not pay, it allows you to accumulate a lot of surplus, right? And so we should be asking ourselves, what's happening with all of that stuff? What's happening with it today? So when we think about corporations with technological advances, it's become a pathway to transfer workers ultimately from chattel enslavement into what we have today, which is low-wage enslavement. These corporate industrial plants that we see today, whether it be oil, plastic, or other chemicals, are just one piece of what must be examined, because when industries increase with an ongoing pursuit of expansion, pursuit of profits, it leaves a toxic industrial trail that wreaks havoc on the health of the workers and all of the residents, not only here, but around the earth, in the pathway of our soil, our water, and our air. So that 8 inches of global sea level rise is just the average. When it comes to U.S. Gulf South states, along with other coastal states like New York and California, and other coastal lands around the globe, 8 inches is just the average. We've seen up to 12, we've seen over a foot of sea level rise in these places, and we're seeing the impact. Let's talk about the heat. The plant's average surface temperature just 2 years ago rose to about 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit. They say 2 is when we're supposed to get nervous. We should have already been nervous. And all of this is coming as a result of an increase in carbon dioxide and other man-made emissions. We know that most of the global warming that we've experienced has happened in just the last 35 years, Gregory. The world is 4.5 billion years old. I want to say this again. Most of the global warming we've experienced has just happened in the last 35 years, and the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. The oceans are absorbing most of that heat, and the top 700 meters of the ocean is warming up beyond measure. Folks in New Orleans, right here in Orleans Parish, people love to go over to Florida and take advantage of the beaches there, right? But we have seen cases most recently where people have died because of bacteria eating what?
Seafood.
Yeah, there's algae and so this bacteria is eating flesh, and we have people die and pass away from that. But that would not be happening if we weren't dealing with the kind of global climate crisis that we're under right now. And even though the media does everything within its power to try to hide those stories and minimize them, we need to know what's going on, and we need to know what we're contending with. When we think about Greenland and the Arctic ice sheets that have decreased, one of the things that I just had to emphasize today is that just within a 23-year time period, period, Antarctica has lost 127 billion tons of ice. But watch this. The rate of Antarctica ice mass loss has tripled in the last decade. We have seen that 125 billion tons of ice has been per year. So in the last 23 years, we see that that's 3,000 billion tons of ice. And that water has to go somewhere. And when that water goes somewhere, we have to contend with it. Just in the last 20 years of the global sea level rise, we've seen that it's been accelerating within the last 100 years. The number of record high temperatures in the United States has been accelerating. And a lot of things, we go back and we mark the Industrial Revolution for a reason. Since the beginning of it, we've seen the acid within the ocean be able to increase. We're seeing all of this, and that's just one side of the environmental crisis. If we were just able to look at our soil, our water, our air, we're seeing that agricultural chemicals, man-made landfills, all of those things are polluting our soil, our water, and our air. The World Health Organization reported that 4 million people die each year due to air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution. And we're talking about premature deaths. So imagine how many more will continue to be impacted if we don't intervene immediately. With all these harmful reports on the health of the earth and the health of the soil, the water, and the air, we need to be asking ourselves, what's the cause of all of this harm? Because if we believe that Flint, Michigan, and most recently the announcement with Newark, New Jersey, having a water crisis, most of the accelerated harm that we've just described, once again, has happened within the last 35 to 45 years. So what's the cause of all of this? When we're talking about the cause, I just want to go on record as saying that we can't entertain a conversation about the environmental crisis if we're not going to contend with the U.S. military. We have to have that talk today. And I want to share, there's so many reasons we need to talk about the military, but because I don't have that much time, I'm going to focus in on 3. One of the reasons that we have to talk about the U.S. military is because it is the capital THE, the largest polluter on the planet. The global research continues to tell us that the U.S. military bases, both domestic and foreign, consistently rank among some of the most polluted places in the world. We're talking about jet and rocket fuel, contamination of drinking water, soil, not just in the U.S. but around the world. We're talking about hundreds of military bases that can be found on the EPA's, Environmental Protection Agency, Superfund site list. And we have one of those Superfund sites right here in New Orleans. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's where Gordon Plaza is. The global research continues to tell us that almost 900 of the nearly 1,200 Superfund sites in the United States are abandoned military facilities or sites that otherwise support the military needs. And we're not counting the military bases themselves. 2 years ago, the U.S. military brought 260,000 barrels of oil per day and emitted more than 25,000 kilotons of carbon dioxide by burning those fuels. So let me just give you these numbers real quick and I'm going to move on. The U.S. Air Force purchased $4 billion worth of fuel. The U.S. Navy purchased $2.8 billion worth of fuel. The U.S. Army, $947 million worth of fuel. And the U.S. Marines, $36 million worth of fuel. If you add all of that up, you're talking about over $16 billion worth of fuel. And we're talking about, when you say purchase, who does that money go to? So the oil industry makes money via the government. That's our working class tax dollars. The military is the Earth's largest polluter, but that's only one of the reasons. A second reason that we've got to focus on the military is because not only do they use excessive amount of oils to function, causing pollution on our tax dollars, the military is actually functioning as a government-sanctioned arm of the oil industries to seek which countries they can devour, which countries they can seize, and control the natural resources of those particular countries and those nations of people. It's despicable that our working class siblings, those who are recruited to join the military, often do so seeking wages and opportunities to provide for their families, not really understanding or realizing to the fullest extent the way by which the military, our government, and ultimately the rich ruling class is manipulating and exploiting their labor. But to some degree, they already are doing the same thing even here locally with workers in the oil industry. Some ways those are constantly being connected for us, but that's reason number 2. Let's go on to reason number 3.